I am Terriea Wild Rose, and I'm so excited to be here with you after a couple weeks of hiatus as I was in an amazing internal pelvic health training, really tending to other pelvises in the space and being tended to so beautifully and sacredly. My pelvis, my womb feels so alive. And I didn't really realize that I even needed it. I thought I was going in to deepen in my service to women, in my service to sacred sexuality, in my service to pleasure as a pathway to health and wholeness. And little did I realize how much I would get. And I am an experiential learner, as many of you might be as well. So it's one thing to take the information in intellectually. It's a whole nother thing to take it in your body. So yes, what that meant was this was hands-on and hands-in work. So ultimately, I met so many layers of myself, even a part of myself that I felt I had laid to rest. In other words, integrated. Only to realize that I had buried that part and exiled that part so far away in my righteousness, in my judgment of people who are promiscuous with their sexuality. Ironically enough, considering I was in the sex trade, exploited as a teenager, and then continued on in sex work as an early adult in stripping. So despite all of my perceived liberation, it actually wasn't authentic liberation, and I'll speak more to that later. And actually what my perceived liberation has been hiding is a self-righteous part of me that has been believing that my moral no, my moral superiority has been actually hiding a part of me, still believing that she's wrong and she did something wrong. And until I actually had the opportunity in this training, because it's very intimate, hands-on, hands-in. I'm invited into other women's bodies and they're invited into mine. And I am in an intimate partnership, so having to negotiate limits and boundaries and negotiate limits and boundaries within the space was outside of my comfort zone. It was outside of my comfort zone. And part of me, even though it wasn't very rational, was believing that I was doing something wrong, like even that I was cheating in my relationship, which I wasn't. But had I not said yes or owned my yes underneath my moral no and moral superiority, I probably would have never have known that this part has been so buried in the recesses of my subconscious, believing that she's wrong. And so my moral no and my moral superiority, my judgments about people who cheat, people who are polygamous, practice polyamory, has really been in a reaction to this part of me that I didn't fully integrate yet. So you think you're signing up for something because you're desiring to evolve your skills and be of service to people, and amazing how you don't even know what you need. You don't even realize that you needed that. Yeah, and of course that's what being an embodied leader is. You got to go first. So I needed to meet the part of myself that would rather avoid any icky feelings of doing something wrong in my moral superiority and my moral no, than having to actually face and feel and forgive and integrate anything that needed to be integrated that moral no and moral superiority was hiding. So I want to speak a bit today about that the nervous system cannot be fully relaxed when the pelvis is still bracing for impact. This was a big realization in this program, and I know I feel like I've had some idea of that, and another layer revealed itself in this program. For centuries, women have been literally bracing for impact. When we think about the how do I say this? Well, I'm just going to say it. The rapes, the intrusions into our body, and literally the physiology of the thighs bracing for impact, and the pelvis bracing for the impact of that intrusion, that invasion. And so we can think about that in terms of rape, or times that we went along with a sexual experience when we really didn't want to. And we can open that up even more to reflect on the medical system and how in our socialization and being shaped to believe that the medical system has our best interest at heart, that they're highly knowledgeable, all the ways that we have allowed and given permission for, even for intrusive procedures, when we didn't really want to, and when it was taking away from the sacredness of the experience. And one example of this, excuse me, as I'm getting over a cold. One example of this is the whole birthing process. I remember both times I was giving birth, first when I was 16, and then at 28 with my son. There was a parade of medical students coming in to look into my vagina, and I did a half kind of, when they come in, they say, "Is it okay? This is a teaching hospital," and I could feel the no in my body, although I wasn't super aware of it then. But it's like, okay, well, I guess I'm supposed to say yes because this is a teaching hospital, and how are you going to learn if you don't look at my vagina? But it was a betrayal. It was a betrayal of myself, and it was invasive. And so many other ways women's bodies have been invaded. Pap smears are getting a bit better these days. Women are tending to do that work more than men. However, I can remember times in my life when it felt really clinical, sterile, and invasive. And then I think about pleasure, women's pleasure, being dismissed. You know, if our reproductive organs, it would appear, serve one purpose, and that's to reproduce babies. And there are countless stories of women having hysterectomies, having certain parts of their reproductive system removed, because if you're not intending to have children, or you've already had children, then the medical system views it as you don't really have a use for it. And this is a abhorrent lie, because the pelvis is so intricately connected to other systems in our body, and I will share more about that shortly. I just mentioned the nervous system as being a big one, and just our inherent right to pleasure. And pleasure is actually a pathway to health. You know, a woman experiencing endometriosis, the thickening of the uterine lining that is above and beyond average than many other women, which can be a painful and debilitating experience each month. For that woman, I did have endometriosis in my 20s and in my early 30s. So I know the pain of the intensity of the experience and the cramps and the bleeding and all of that. And what we don't realize and this is just one example, is that for endometriosis, for example, you can have a K-spot, what is called a K-spot. Did you even know that you had a K-spot in your vagina, ladies? Yeah, you do. And these K-spot stimulation and orgasms can actually support with endometriosis. They can support the draining of any fibroids or cysts and countless other benefits, which I won't get into here, but please do reach out if you are curious. I have several offerings available. But did you also know that your vagus nerve, the vagus nerve for women, ends on your cervix? Did you know that? Did you know that a woman's cervix is connected to her heart? So if a woman is not feeling emotionally connected, or maybe there's some sort of ruptures or inconsistency or intensity, or it's a toxic or dysfunctional relationship, so physiologically, her cervix will keep out the sperm. Like, let's say that she's trying to have a baby. If she's not feeling safe and emotionally connected, her cervix will physiologically kill the sperm. Isn't that incredible? But if she is feeling safe and emotionally connected, it is more likely that she will be able to get pregnant. All other factors considered. Isn't that, that's fascinating? And I knew this on an energetic level. I know that our cervix, from working with Kundalini energy, serves as a gateway that will allow energy in to the womb or keep it out. And so again, thinking back to how much women have had to brace for impact, and our bodies have been invaded over the years, our protective structures could be working overtime, even when it's not needed anymore. And so this can show up in a myriad of manifestations, like the inability to get pregnant, like feeling numbness or pain manifesting during intercourse, like the inability to have orgasm. And it's just, again, I just have to acknowledge how fascinating the body is. And so we have an opportunity as women to support each other to truly relax all the defenses that have been built up in our pelvis and perhaps have been manifesting in physical symptoms like endometriosis, like fibroids, like cysts, like infertility, hormonal imbalances, anorgasmia, pudendal neuralgia, digestive issues. That's a big one. And your vagina is right connected to your anus and your rectum. And really need to be educated about how pleasure actually supports our wholeness. A woman who has regular orgasms experience better overall health and quality of life. But we're not taught that. We are taught that our reproductive organs are there to have babies and to serve men, to serve the desires of men. And so, again, I will say that the nervous system will never fully relax until the pelvis has learned to stop bracing for impact. Another correlation is the pelvis and the jaw. So anyone, if you're like me and have ever experienced intense TMJ, we know that giving you a mouth massage that seeks to relax the mouth muscles, which are intricately connected to your pelvis, can support the pelvis to relax and let go. Your cervix, when stimulated, especially because it's where the nervous system, the ventral the vagus nerve ends at your cervix, stimulating it can create relaxation and regulation in your nervous system and can deepen the connection. So my mind, my heart, my spirit is blown away about the intricacy and the importance of care that is holistic and addresses the whole person and addresses the fact that our pelvis is not this separate entity. Our nervous system is not separate from our pelvis, and we need to receive the care and the attention that supports them working optimally together so that we can be in health, in wellness for a very long time. And let me tell you that your pleasure is a significant contributor. There are so many pleasure spots available in your vagina, in your anus, in your closer to your cervix. So I share all this because it's exciting news. And women, womb shaman priestesses and sexual keepers, were the keepers of this knowledge. And women were supporting and caring for women, knowing that your pelvis is your power center. Your pelvis is your power center, and a woman that is deeply connected to her pelvis and can therefore connected to her womb, her vagina, is connected to her power and makes her a dangerously embodied woman. So if any of this interests you, I have several offerings in the mix. I am a sexological bodyworker, primarily working with women in a sacred and ceremonial way. I work with a constellation of the manifestation of symptoms in the pelvis area, some that I named before and others that you can reach out and connect, and I can let you know if I can support you with that. Also, I have a program coming up called Erotic Coherent Relational Blueprint, and this is all about bringing your harmonized, regulated nervous system into right relationship, into coherence with your pleasure and your desire. Because what we notice is you could be expending your desire, your eros, your life force energy in toxic, dysfunctional dynamics, believing that it's chemistry, when really it's activation of your nervous system and an addiction to the adrenaline addicted cycle. And for women especially, the bonding hormone oxytocin gets released every time you have sex. So, when we judge another woman for the fact that she's staying in a toxic and dysfunctional relationship, there are some real factors that are maintaining that bond. And the physiological response of her body to sex and the shaping of our sex life into urgency and intensity and mistaking that for great sex. That's one end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum is those of us who've learned how to numb out and believe that feeling numb, maybe having an inability to have orgasm or low libido, lack of desire for sex, which can also translate into a lack of desire for life, because again, everything is interconnected, and how one area of your life is impacting you will impact all areas at some level. It's kind of like the saying, how you do one thing is how you do everything. So we can't separate the functioning or the lack of functioning of your sexuality with what you have available for your success, for your career, for your family, for your motivation, for your discipline, for money. It's all connected. So in this erotic coherent relational blueprint, we are choosing the middle path, and we work with two currents, erotic literacy and erotic embodiment, because it's important that the mind has an education and an understanding of sexuality and sexual responses that is actually empowering and skyrockets your confidence. And then it's one thing to have the information, which power is knowledge. Knowledge is power. And it's another thing to embody it and to be the version that knows how to walk the middle path in relationship with your sexual energy and have it nourish everything. Nourish your life, nourish your relationships, nourish your finances, nourish your health. This is a big one. There's a direct correlation between your sexuality and your health that is going to manifest over time. Your nervous system cannot sustain explosive chemistry for the long term. Your body will find a way to manifest it, and maybe it already has. And your nervous system cannot sustain being numbed out. That too will have significant impacts on all areas of your life. So we're up to some big things, and it's always better together. The structure of a group container, the amplification of the intentions when we come together, and just how miracles can manifest when 2 or more people gather, as is expressed in A Course in Miracles. This blueprint will meet you where you are at. It's going to be unique to you. It's an intelligence. Eros is an intelligence. It already knows what you need. It already knows what you need, and it already desires to support you to experience it. So thank you for joining me here. It's good to just drop in and share. And in the summary, I will have links to Erotic Coherent Relational Blueprint, as well as to work with me one-on-one for some sexological bodywork. I love coming on YouTube because there's just so much more of an opportunity to slow things down, as opposed to like the urgency of getting everything into a 3-minute video on social media. And I don't do scripts or anything. I just allow it to flow. So yeah, it's just so nice to be in alignment on YouTube and just ride the waves. Okay. Much love.